yours.
Thank you so much, Rashad, and thank you all. Thank you, Owsley, for putting on this amazing festival, and Sarah, and all of the other volunteers who make this possible. It's really a very special gathering. And I'm so honored to be on the same stage with you, Mary Evelyn, to share this space. I'm a neuroscientist by training, and one of the central insights from modern neuroscience is that our brains are plastic. And what we mean by that is that experience can get under the skin and shape our brains. It also invites the possibility that we can actually train our brains for the promotion of human flourishing. These mechanisms of plasticity are neutral with respect to whether they're good or bad. If there is adversity happening, if trauma is happening, it will get under the skin, it will scar our brain. And there's been a lot of scarring over the last number of years in particular. Of particular relevance to this audience, Kentucky is one of 28 states in the United States that saw more than a 10% increase in the use of prescription psychiatric drugs over the last 3 years. 29% of adults in Kentucky today are taking psychiatric drugs, and that's been a 13% increase since January of 2021. I'm not someone who's anti-medication, but this is simply a data point to underscore the magnitude of the problem, which is that our well-being is in serious decline. And the components that comprise our well-being are the kind of components that are leading us to some of the most devastating problems that we face today, including decisions that have been made about our planet and climate change, decisions that are embedded in the systemic racism that we are confronting in our nation, and decisions and consequences with states of depression and loneliness that are increasing with such magnitude. In a poll that was taken just before COVID, 76% of Americans reported being either moderately or significantly lonely. And loneliness is more than twofold the risk factor than obesity for mortality. And this underscores how these constructs get under the skin. One of the messages that I wish to share with you this evening is something that has been repeatedly offered by His Holiness the Dalai Lama. We were just with him in India just about 10 days ago for a series of events. First time I've seen him in person since COVID, and it was really such a privilege and so nourishing to be with him. And he reminds us that every human being is basically the same, and that we all have the wherewithal, we all have the capacity to flourish. And I'd like to put it in more specific ways and share with you a little of the science around it. We actually are all born to be kind. And we're all born to flourish. This is part of our nature. Some of you may be surprised to say that we're all, with the statement that we're all born to be kind. And let me just give you one little tidbit of evidence. In research that's been done with young infants, 6-month-old infants, if you expose these infants to puppets that are playing together, and in one case, the puppets are warm-hearted and are kind to each other, and in another case, the puppets are selfish and aggressive, guess which the infants prefer to look at? I'm sure that all of you are guessing correctly. The infants prefer the kind puppets, but they don't, it's not like 55% to 45%. And I actually just went back to this original paper, which was published in one of the most prestigious scientific journals in the world, to actually check the statistics. 100% of 6-month-old infants showed this preference. 100%. So we're born to show this preference. And when we engage in practices to cultivate qualities like kindness, we're not creating something de novo, but rather we're reminding ourselves of our basic nature. And this is something so incredibly important and really something that we believe is critical in helping us to shift the narrative. We are exposed on a daily basis to messages of fear in the media. And our Surgeon General in the United States, who I've gotten to know over the last several years, really an amazing person by the name of Vivek Murthy, has framed this as an epic struggle between the forces of fear and the forces of love. Fear, we know from modern neuroscience, actually constricts the aperture of our awareness. It literally does that so that we become less attentive to other qualities of a human being. And we focus on simply those that are potentially triggers of threat. And this is the paradigm that many people in our country are now living in, and it is one that is pernicious and has effects not just on our mind, but also on our body. So one of the great insights from modern science is that the same mechanisms that encode trauma, the same mechanisms that are responsible for suffering, are responsible for the health inequities that we see. These are mechanisms of plasticity. These mechanisms can be harnessed for the good. When human beings first evolved on this planet, none of us were brushing our teeth. And yet, I'm sure every one of you brushes your teeth. In fact, virtually every human being on the planet now brushes their teeth. This is not part of our genome. This is something that we've all collectively figured out how to do. And I think most people would agree that their minds are even more important than their teeth. And if we spent even as short a time as we spend each day brushing our teeth, nourishing our mind and our heart, this world would be a different place. So one of the things that we are focused on these days is disseminating strategies to cultivate human flourishing, human well-being. And we're really excited to bring this to a number of different sectors, and one of them that we've spent a lot of time with, particularly over the last 10 years, is education. Our educators in this country are really suffering, and when they suffer, our children suffer. And so if we can bring strategies, simple strategies, to help educators and those who work on behalf of our children in school systems, if we help them to become more well, to flourish, we will have trickle-down effects on our students. And we have actually launched, thank you, we've launched a project here in Louisville that started just this month. And we will be working with more than 1,000 personnel in the Jefferson County public school system. And if we can have the one slide so if any of you either work for the Jefferson County public school system, or if you know somebody who works for the Jefferson County public school system, please refer them to this work, because all of the employees, not just teachers, office staff, administrators, principals, kitchen staff, bus drivers, everyone is welcome and encouraged to participate. And this is a little blurb about it. And we are bringing strategies to cultivate well-being through a simple program that we've developed that's been put in the form of an app, which any of you can freely download, called the Healthy Minds Program. And one of the things that we found in work that we've already done is that when teachers receive this, there are two specific findings that we've reported on that have just been published in the scientific literature that I'd like to share, and I'll end with this. One is that when we taught this program to teachers just before COVID and followed them during COVID in a randomized controlled trial, it turns out that these teachers are 6 times more likely to still be teaching today than their randomly assigned counterparts. 6 times more likely to still be teaching. And when we did a cost-benefit analysis, for every dollar invested in a program to train well-being, there was a $3.34 return on that investment in 3 years. Pretty good return. The second finding is one that is really at the core of this pernicious achievement gap, a so-called achievement gap in academic achievement between African American and white students in America today. Research shows that one of the most significant drivers of this achievement gap is what education researchers call a disciplinary gap. And the disciplinary gap is the disproportionate administration of harsh and punitive punishment toward members of racial outgroups. And even this is being done by teachers who on a questionnaire will say that they have absolutely no bias. Yet when we test them with more sensitive measures of unconscious or implicit bias, they show that, and we all show that. And it turns out that simple strategies to cultivate particularly the aspect of well-being that is associated with this element that we call connection. And connection includes qualities like appreciation and gratitude, kindness and compassion. It turns out that this reduces our measures of implicit bias, and this endures for up to 6 months, which is what we've shown in our research. So let me end by saying that the scientific research is really consistent with a very different narrative about human beings. We are kind by nature. We are born to flourish. And with a simple shift in mindset, there's a lot that we can do to change this world. So thank you all very much.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for that, Richie. And I'm hoping that we can return to this idea of being hardwired for kindness. I think that's really compelling. I also want to invite Mary Evelyn. I want to invite Daniel. Just any responses that you may have to what Richie shared for us.
Yeah, I have a question for Richie. I love the finding on appreciation and gratitude in schools among kids. Is there a way to extend that? You said it lasted for 6 months. Could it be embedded as an ongoing practice, do you think, in schools?
I do think so, and we've only tested it as of now up to 6 months, so it may indeed endure for longer than 6 months. We just haven't tested it. One of the aspirations that we have is that the program that we're bringing to Louisville is available for at no cost in an app that we've freely released. And so we would encourage people to explore it, and it will be around after the research project itself has ended, after the formal project, and it will be supported and updated. And we have a version that we're bringing to Louisville that's quite specific to educators. And so we will do everything we can to reduce the barriers so that it really becomes a part of the culture in the schools.
Beautiful. Thank you.
Did you want to add anything, Mary Evelyn? Or?
Well, I think it's fantastic research, and I think the fact that it's coming out of an educational setting has a lot to do with what Richie's done for a long time. So this is just a big shout out to say that even doing research along these lines and doing research on meditation is very forward thinking, especially now in its application for education. So I thank you for that. It's not easy to do in academia.
Thank you.